expression originated in Great Britain by Lord Cameron of Dillington. He was a farmer who was appointed by Prime Minister Tony Blair as the first head of the Countryside Agency in 1999. Cameron's expression described how volatile and easily disrupted a society's food supply can become. Now, supermarkets rely on what's called a just-in-time delivery system to restock their goods, as most stores will only carry enough food to last for 3 days. It's a very fragile system in which most people will take for granted. There can be a wide variety of circumstances ranging from natural to man-made events which can disrupt the delivery. With this in mind, we also need to take into account that an average household, especially in the United States, will only have enough food for 3 days. And according to Cameron, if store shelves remain barren for 3 days, you will begin to see anarchy emerge in a population. Now, within 3 days of not eating, an individual will have a complete change in their psychological and sociological behavior. A primitive, primal-like behavior will emerge in an individual as their need to feed will begin to overwhelm their ethics, their morals, and lawfulness. I mean, it's a very powerful, motivating force in which none of us are immune to, and it can't be ignored. The affected individual, or group of people for that matter, will begin to do whatever it takes to feed themselves. People will say, well, it's a far-fetched scenario that won't or is very unlikely to happen here, not in the United States. Well, on September 10th, 2001, if I said in 24 hours a dozen men will hijack a half-dozen passenger airliners, destroy the World Trade Center, cripple the Pentagon, attempt to destroy the White House, and murder thousands of Americans, I would have been met with such harsh criticism by the sheeple saying, it's a far-fetched scenario, you are crazy, it won't happen here, not in the United States of America. Well, guess what? As unbelievable as that scenario sounds, it happened. There is a first time for everything. If an event as implausible as September 11th sounds can occur, so can other situations, whether natural or man-made, which can wreak havoc on food supplies and delivery systems to supermarkets. And humans who do not have access to food will go to very desperate measures to feed themselves.
A conference on international food aid is set to begin Monday in Kansas City. This as a top UN official is predicting a new era of hunger. Recently, over 30 countries have been hit with riots or violent protests, all because of the rising cost of food. Michelle Miller has more.
In Haiti this week, riot police turned their guns on the nation's hungry. Looting and violence that claim the life of a UN peacekeeper capped 3 days of unrest by those who can no longer afford to eat. A food crisis with deadly consequences is spreading across the globe. The hardest hit so far are those living in the third world, on the razor's edge of poverty in places like Egypt, Bangladesh, and Zimbabwe.
While many are worrying about filling their gas tanks, many others around the world are struggling to fill their stomachs.
What we are seeing is a perfect storm.
The World Food Program blames soaring food prices on a convergence of rising energy costs, natural disasters linked to climate change, and competition for grain used to make biofuels like ethanol. Worldwide, food prices have risen 40% since mid-2007, and close to 40 countries are facing food emergencies. With 1 billion people living on less than $1 a day, the absolute minimum for survival, the crisis is beginning to threaten political stability.
A hungry man is an angry man, and I think that's what all the governments are grappling with.
The UN reports unrest in 33 countries, 20 of which have imposed some sort of food price controls. After Haiti's president cut the price of rice by 15% today, its Senate dismissed the country's prime minister.
In many developing countries, the poor spend up to 75% of their income on food. When prices of basic foods rise, it hits hard.
In some first world countries, too. At this food bank in New York City, caseworkers say shrinking supplies can't keep pace with a client base that's doubled in 2 years. The World Food Program says it's facing a $500 million shortfall in funding this year, and the problem is still growing. Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
Secretary of State, they've all come out to condemn the excessive use of force by the Turkish police. However, it's the U.S. which is one of the main exporters of tear gas and pepper spray to Turkey. In fact, the country allegedly sent over 60 tons in the past decade. That's worth more than $20 million. The U.S. also sells tear gas to the countries like Egypt and Bahrain. RT's Marina Portnaya reports on who's cashing in on all the rivers of tears.
For 6 days, the world has seen video and images of Turkish police cracking down on thousands of anti-government protesters. And while unarmed activists of all ages have been targeted indiscriminately with tear gas and pepper spray, critics say that behind closed doors, the United States has long played a major role in aiding the police brutality that is currently unfolding in Turkey. You see, according to reports, Turkey has bought $21 million worth of tear gas and pepper spray in the past 12 years, and the United States is listed as a main provider. See, the U.S. is one of the world's largest manufacturers and exporters of tear gas, and whether sold or given, tear gas shipments from the United States to anywhere in the world must be approved by the U.S. government. The three big American tear gas manufacturers, Non-Lethal Technologies, Defense Technology, and Combined Systems, Inc., have reportedly exported tear gas to dozens of nations rocked by widespread protests, including Egypt, Bahrain, Tunisia, and Yemen. And now, as the uprisings in Turkey grow more dangerous by the day, dozens of activists have taken to the streets in New York City, rallying across from the Turkish consulate to condemn what they call the government's brutal and deplorable use of tear gas.
Man-made disasters. The present economic crisis has been far-reaching around the globe. Protests and rioting have been fueled by high unemployment, the rising cost of living expenses, which include food, devaluation of currency, and a lower standard of living. Many people simply cannot obtain food, which is necessary to their own survival. The situation is far grimmer if an individual has a family to support. People are desperate and willing to go to great lengths, even if it means resorting to anarchy. There's a saying, when people lose everything and they have nothing left to lose, they lose it. There was rioting in the streets of Rabat due to unemployment, rising cost of food, and just a general overall cost of living.
It's also devastating. But what we have now is a situation where food prices are really just toppling people into straightforward hunger and famine. I mean, in Haiti, people are eating mud cakes in order to keep hunger pangs at bay. Things are pretty dire.
Myanmar is also exposing China's loophole when it comes to the communist nation's most important staple food, rice. According to Irrawaddy, a popular news website founded by Burmese exiles living in Thailand. According to the Rice Wholesale Center in Muse, Myanmar's largest trading hub on the Chinese border, people have disappeared without paying their debts. That amounts to almost $2 million worth of buying rights from Burmese traders. Interestingly, Lu also has an indirect connection with the Chinese state, showing how serious China's food shortage crisis could be. According to Sherman Teen Vice President, the lowest rice wholesale center represents the branches of the Shangsheng. The lower side deals with all Myanmar traders as corporate representatives, says Stein. And the lower confidence traders also have a strong track record of doing business with the companies. It has also been noted that the Chinese trader owns a 20% stake in the company. The company is called China Food Trade Corporation Limited and is located in the Yunnan Pilot Free Trade Zone. The entity is controlled by China Southwest Enterprise Company Management, which owns 70% of the shares owned by the China Trading Network. This is no ordinary company. It is under the State Asset Supervision and Management Committee of the State Council of China, the supervisors and managers of the CSX. The property belongs to the state ownership of companies under the supervision of the central government. No traders on either side of the central Myanmar border have had any contact with the lower tiers as of December 2nd.
Neither has food nor money to feed its citizens. The horrifying food crisis in China is quite an embarrassment for the government of the second largest economy in the world, and Myanmar is all set to expose China's desperation for rice.
Chinese authorities are investigating thousands of dead fish. US scientists have started an investigation of their own as to why dozens of large whales are washing.
Chile that has baffled authorities. Thousands of langoustines washed up in central Concepcion province. Beaches have been covered red as the Dublin Bay prawns were found.
Their cause of death is unknown, and how they got there is unknown.
It's next door, and where we found it was just lined with sharks.
Hundreds of marine animals washed up dead off the coast.
Soon. You're not going to have no more animals soon. Only thing you're going to be able to depend on is a grocery store until that shuts down. And when that shuts down, just like that's what this is all getting ready for, it's over for you. How are you going to feed your families, your children? Everything's nice to you right now when you're chilling, right? You're chilling. Everything's so nice right now, right? But you see over what do you call it? Over 40 million animals dead. All these animals, over 40 million animals dead. Do you know the impact that's going to have on the world? People are already starving. People in Britain are eating, poor people are eating rats in Britain. Bums. People are eating rats in Britain. I was on the news.
Nations and among nations, all this world is going to go to hell because the crisis won't quit. The people will die of hunger. They will die in increasing numbers. They will kill for food. The structure of society will be destroyed in the fight over food, which is not there. Therefore, either we win in this fight against this evil, or there won't be anything to fight
for. Is coming. It's going to come like a tsunami. It's going to hit us like a ton of bricks. There's a lot of people. You've woken up a lot of people, Alex, and thank you for that. But there are a lot of people who just have no clue, no idea.
NASA informed them of this. They built dumps, deep underground military facilities. They have enough room for the elite and the government. They've been building them for 50 years. That's where they're planning on hiding. And the heck with us. And they've been storing food and oxygen. In the past 2 years, they've been running the plants that make nuclear fuel rods to power their domes. 300 tons a year each. And actually, it's the making of the nuclear fuel rods is what destroyed the ozone, because they are exempt from the CFC law.
The 15-story luxury apartment complex built in a Kansas former nuclear missile silo, and for $3 million, you could have had a full-floor private apartment. What amenities in that bunker?
Well, it's like a miniature cruise ship, Michael. It has everything from a rock climbing wall and a game arcade for the kids to continuing education classrooms, a library, a movie theater, a bar and lounge. It's got everything that you need to spread out and maintain some semblance of normal when things outside are anything but normal.
Do your purchasers come and hang out, or are they only coming there in a worst-case scenario?
Well, originally, when they purchased it, they believed that they were only going to come out when there was some catastrophe somewhere. But after they saw the level of finishes and the variety of things to do, they've started coming out regularly. Most of them come out between 2 or even 3 times a year and spend a week or two to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city and feel in a very safe environment.
If everything hits the fan and I am one of your owners, how am I getting to Kansas?
Well, you're getting to Kansas probably by driving or flying. Most of our clients have a 3-plan type of thing. They also have purchased extended range armored vehicles. These people have vehicles that have a range of up to 2,500 miles without having to stop for fuel, and they're armored and they're bulletproof. So if it takes them 2 days to drive and they have to stop, they can get here without having to worry about a fuel supply.
If I had 3 million burning a hole in my pocket, and I don't, among my concerns would be that I'm claustrophobic. Once I'm inside my apartment, I'm looking at walls, right?
Well, no, you're not. We've actually employed some of the best psychologists that there are that do consulting with NASA. We've got 9-foot-high ceilings in the apartments, and they have electronic windows that are fed with a variety of scenes. Some of them are live, high-definition scenes that are displayed on television sets that are framed out to look like windows. And you can see what time of day it is. You can see what the weather's doing. It psychologically doesn't make you feel like you're underground. And they're really wonderful. And also, if you want to live in New York City and you want to view a Central Park, we can get the high-definition views and seasonal views, and you can literally live wherever you want to live. You can have whatever views you want to do. But the bottom line is that psychologically, you don't feel like you're underground.
Joel Skousen breaks down the globalist plan to shut down America and stage a new world war.
In one day, America will go from day to night. And if you haven't prepared in advance, there's not enough time to prepare in 24 hours, even if you saw it that early.
Coming to the Info War in November is our new documentary film presentation.
Strategic relocation is a systematic way to think strategically in the future about how do I safeguard.
Joel Skousen, Strategic Relocation.
The freeways are going to be crowded, they're going to run out of gasoline, they're going to run out of food, and then they're going to start to go north and south of those freeways.
Joel Skousen is renowned as one of the world's foremost experts in strategic relocation and the securing of your home.
We talk about natural disasters, the health environment, we talk about pollution, the water quality. My personal experience about being in every one of these states.
Government is digging in for the organized, incremental collapse of society and world war.
The U.S. isn't building huge underground bases and bunkers because of some terrorist threat. They know that a massive nuclear attack is coming. They want that attack to come. Most people won't even be ready and won't be able to get out of town when any of these nuclear weapons fall, because there'll be absolute panic.
There is no preparedness without strategy.
What I tell people is that you're
living now and start getting yourself into the mindset of living a simple life and possibly downsizing. That is ultimately what you're going to have to think about. It may not be the best compared to city life. However, you are going to be way better off out in the country than in the city. We all need to start preparing ourselves in that state of mind, and we need to start preparing to leave now. In other words, I'm saying get ready to flee out of the city.
One of the things I do is, right at the beginning of the class, I put a velvet bag over people's head. And then I tell them I'm going to place a $10 gold piece somewhere in the room and have you all look for it. And whoever finds it gets to keep it. And so I do that, and then I say, okay, go look for it, and immediately someone says, oh, here it is, I have it, I found it. And everybody takes their bag and says, well, that's no fair, he didn't have a hood on. And I say, okay, so let's say that there's a big earthquake or a big emergency. And if you don't have a way of communicating, because the cell phones are going to be down, the radio stations are going to be down, if you don't have a way of communicating outside of those, it's like having a bag over your head. You're not going to know what roads are blocked. You're not going to know what roads have police that are not allowing people to go through. You're not going to have gasoline in your car. If you had a shortwave radio or an amateur radio, which are very inexpensive, you could listen to the radio amateurs who are going to be immediately there, because that's what they're set up for, that's what they're trained to do. And if you had an amateur radio license, which anybody can get these days, it's like you had eyes. You can see where to go, where there's problems, where there are not problems, where there are riots, where there are not riots, and carry on and go there. If you had a bug-out bag in your car, you'd have gas and fuel and medical supplies and things to keep you warm, things to keep you cool, all packed up, ready to go.
Then
Just a small bag.
okay, simply take a black marker and put B1. If you're taking a can of oatmeal or one of those little plastic things of oatmeal, put B1, B2. B is breakfast. Then put L1, 2, 3. Do it for 30 days, and by doing that, and then of course D1, dinner one, that will show you how much stuff 30 days worth of food is. But remember this, you're looking to at least have 1,500 calories a day. And in order to have 1,500 calories a day, you're going to have to take the little can or the little container with the food, and you're going to have to calculate how many of those are 1,500 calories per day. Starvation diet. In a crisis situation, people will eat to satisfy their concerns. I'm not saying it's right to do that. Then you'll understand that what it takes. So if you got $200, and I'm just going. If I know that different people have different tastes, but you can sure do a lot of stuff with rice, meat, and some sauces, and you can sure do a lot of stuff with organic oatmeal. You can sure do a lot of stuff. It's not just the oatmeal, it's the dried fruits you can put on it, the nuts you can put on it. There's so many ways you can do this, but it'll give you an idea why I say, if you're even considering buying the metals, don't.
Media outlets love to demonize those who are self-reliant, portraying survivalists as criminal-like nutcases, hiding out in the mountains, wearing camouflage, carrying assault rifles, and planning on overthrowing the government in a violent coup. Now, are there some who are like that? Probably. But the vast majority are your everyday common folk who just want to be secure when facing an uncertain future. It's a form of insurance we hope we never have to use, but we're glad we have it when we need it. You have everything to gain by prepping and everything to lose if you don't. Now, despite this, many people, many will not give preparedness a second thought. And if you are one of those individuals, will you be prepared to look at yourself in the mirror, telling yourself how ignorant and lazy you were should something happen? Do you have a family? Be prepared to look your spouse and children in the eyes and tell them, and just tell them that you are too ignorant and lazy to prepare as they cry and scream. It takes weeks to die from starvation, but it is a slow, lingering, painful death. Then what do? Are you going to sit idly by and suffer? Watch your family suffer? Or are you going to go out and try to obtain food by any means necessary? Because you're going to die otherwise. And I'll tell you right now, you do not want to be one of those people out in the streets having to loot, pillage, and murder to obtain your next meal. You will be competing against others who will have no afterthought of killing you. You're going to be taking an unnecessary risk with your life. It doesn't matter if you're the biggest badass in your community. You have the latest tactical nylon equipment and half a dozen firearms. Sooner or later, you're going to come across a bigger badass than you are, or your community members may grow tired of your exploits and bring your wave of terror.
We're talking about Ted Turner, a multi-billionaire. The fellow was married to Jane Hanoi Fonda.
That's correct. He's very happily indicated that he gave $1 billion to the United Nations. And the United Nations, of course, has a depopulation plan. And he said that the consequence of food shortages and water shortages worldwide were then going to lead into so much chaos that people would start cannibalizing one another. And that this was going to be soon, he feels.
Well, look at this.